It is beginning to hurt. The first pain they felt was from the Russia-imposed food sanctions, the sanctions against the imports of food from the EU and the US. That meant that prices have gone up considerably in the past few months. The foodstuffs have not disappeared. We can still get salmon and Parmesan cheese, but it's imported from Belarus, which is not known to be a big exporter of these items. So there is a lot of so-called parallel imports, which means the price is marked up by the middlemen. So the Russian population, especially those in the big cities, have been feeling substantial food price increases in recent months. That's one part of it. Another part, which has not so much to do with the sanctions, is the drop in the exchange rate. The literal collapse of the ruble in December caused a lot of Russians to panic, buy everything, sort of appliances, cars, everything with substantial value, to spend their rubles before they became valueless. So that gave them a sort of feeling of being very rich in December, having a lot of purchasing. That is now gone too. And now we're looking at 2015, when inflation will start eating out their living standards, when they will feel massive budget cutbacks hurting social services, healthcare, perhaps layoffs. Wages will not be indexed for inflation. So this is going to be a very hard year for the Russian population at large. Well, based on what happened with the foreign ministers meeting in Brussels the other day, there were some discussions on whether the sanctions should be eased off. But the increased fighting around Donetsk airport in particular, and Donbass in general, since the new year, has caused most countries in the EU to say we cannot ease off the sanctions. So my guess, and I think that's almost a certainty, is that in March the EU will decide that sanctions will have to remain. This is incredibly unfortunate in the sense that everybody knows that the sanctions are not working in the intended sense. The purpose of sanctions was to get Mr. Putin to withdraw from Crimea and to cease his support for the rebels in eastern Ukraine. None of that is going to happen, and everybody knows that. You're not going to get Crimea back, and Russia is not going to stop interfering in the Donbass because of the sanctions. The track record of sanctions generally is that they do not ever work. I mean, look at Cuba and North Korea. Sanctions are a mug's game. It's for politicians to demonstrate that they're doing something when they don't really know what to do. So the sanctions don't have the intended effect, but they have the side effect of crippling the Russian economy and of adding to the exorcisation of Russia and of the Russian economy from the Western community at large. And this, again, will have very negative long-term implications. But sanctions is a political game. There is very little realization of the hard economics involved here, unfortunately. Yes, until the crisis erupted in Ukraine, the Russians were quite optimistic that foreign direct investment would pick up and that the investment activity in the Russian economy in general would pick up. And this is by far the biggest problem for the Russian economy, that there is insufficient fixed capital investment. With the crisis in Ukraine, it's not only that foreign direct investment has slumped very badly, as foreign investors do not dare get involved in the Russian market, fearing what the next round of sanctions may be. It is also the case that sanctions against the Russian financial system means that Russian companies can't get credit, meaning they have to pay off all their loans, and that reduces their ability to make investment both inside Russia and outside Russia. So what the sanctions are achieving is that Russia is becoming disintegrated from the West. There is very little investment going in, and there is very little investment going out. So the sanctions are achieving sort of an ostracization of Russia from the Western community, which will have very significant negative long-term effects.